Title: Nourishing the Life of the Flesh.
People of the Vedian period did not know a single physical illness. Even at the age of 150 or 200, they remained of good cheer, bubbling with life, and absolutely healthy. They have no doctors or healers like those who exist today in such numbers. Illnesses of the flesh were impossible because the way of life on people's own homestead, the natural dimension of love arranged by them, wholly regulated their nourishment process. Man's organism was provided with everything essential in the right quantity, and at the most propitious time of day for using the food, and at the most favorable disposition of the planets for consuming the food. Pay attention, Vladimir. It is no accident in nature that everything is arranged so that in the course of just a spring-summer-fall cycle, the different plants ripen and bear their fruits in a specific sequence. First the herbs appear. The dandelion, for example. They too are pleasant and can be tasty, especially when combined with winter food. The early currants and strawberries and raspberries ripened, earlier in the sun and later in the shade. The sweet cherries, then the sour cherries and many other fruits, herbs and berries. Choosing precisely their own time, they tried to attract human attention with their unusual shape, color, and fragrance. There was no science about food then. What one should eat, how much and at what time, no one even thought about that then. Nonetheless, man used everything he needed for food precisely down to the gram. Each berry, herb and fruit has its own day in the year, its own hour and minute, when it can bring the most benefit to man's organism. When, raising itself, it completes the process by linking to the universal planets. Then, it factors in the nature of the ground beneath it, and the plants around it, and man, bestowing its gaze upon them, assesses and determines what it needs most of all. On that very day, when it is ready to serve man, man honors it with his acceptance, and allows this perfection to be his food. I said that the pregnant woman should always reside in her own orchard, in the dimension created with her beloved, all 9 months. This is not an occult mystery. In it lies the great rationality of divine being. Judge for yourself. In nature there are many plants that can discontinue pregnancy in women painlessly. Garlic, for example, and oregano, male fern, birthwort, and many others. Other plants can help, in harmony, to develop the fruit in the mother's womb. No one could ever say which ones must be taken, and in what quantity. Only he who is in the mother's womb knows this, and he is concerned not only about himself, but about his mother. This is why it often happens that a woman who has given birth to a child becomes prettier, as if younger. For this to happen, the pregnant woman must definitely be in her own orchard. Every blade of grass in it knows her, and the fruit grows only for her. She has also come to know their taste and smell. Her desires are natural and will determine better than anyone how much of what she needs to take as nourishment. On someone else's homestead and someone else's orchard, that kind of precision is impossible. The other person's orchard may even be many times richer and its vegetation more varied. Ideal nourishment is also impossible in someone else's orchard, because before using some fruit, berry, or herb for food, the woman must first try it. She wanted to eat an apple, so she picked it and took a bite. She swallowed the piece and immediately sensed that her organism did not need this. By doing this, she had harmed herself and her child. Why did this happen? The whole problem is that even outwardly identical tasting fruits can be made up of different substances. In her own orchard, tasting its fruits more than once, she could not make that mistake. In someone else's, a mistake is inevitable. What knowledge, what law helped man of that era to nourish himself so precisely? The absence of laws and treaties. He could rely only on the divine. Today, people say that man is whole, one with nature. But where does this whole lie now, when man consumes only the artificial food the system finds convenient and offers him? Hours for consuming food have been set by an arbitrary, artificial system. Then, in the Vedian period, man's God-given senses decided everything for him, and the tiniest dimension could satisfy the sensation of hunger. After all, man senses in accord with his dimension of love, like the most perfect automaton or smartest treatise, determine the minutes when he should take nourishment. Man walked in the dimension he created. His thought was free and could solve universal problems or create. All around were fruits, alluring to their beauty. Intuitively, he picked one of them, or two or three, and ate them, without letting his thoughts stray to what God had given him for his delectation. Man did not think about food then. He nourished himself the way we today breathe. The dimension he created, together with his intuition, resolved precisely the problem of how, when, and what to feed his flesh. In winter, many plants were released from their fruits and leaves and prepared to rest. Winter is for creating the coming spring. However, even in winter, man did not waste his thought on food, although he did not prepare anything to eat in advance. All this was done for him with great effort and love by his domestic animals. The squirrels prepared many mushrooms and nuts. The bees collected pollen and honey. In the fall, the bear dug a cellar and put roots in it. And in early spring, awakening, the bear went up to the man's dwelling and rumbled or hit the door lightly with its paw. It didn't matter. The bear was summoning man in order to show him which of the cellars to dig up. Might the bear have forgotten where he hid the food? Might he have missed contact? Any member of the family might come out to him, but most often it was a child. Giving the awakened worker a pat on the snout, he would go to the marked spot and stamp his little foot. In that spot, the bear worked hard to claw up the earth and tear out the stores. When it saw them, it rejoiced, jumped up, and showed its paw above the surface, but did not eat them first, waiting for the person to take at least something to his own dwelling. The person may have put up some food himself too, but this was more art than work. Many families made wine from various berries and fruits. The wine was not strong or alcoholic, like vodka, but a most salubrious beverage. Of animal food, man might also use milk, but not from every animal. He took it only from an animal he considered to be good-natured, kind, and intelligent. And that expressed a need for man to enjoy its output. For example, if one of the children or one of the older family members went up to a goat or cow and touched its udder, but the animal suddenly shied away, man would not drink the milk of an animal that did not want to share it with him. It often happened that animals, and some way unknown to them, determined that at a given moment the composition of the milk mixture was not beneficial to this person. People of the Vedian civilization only fed on the diverse plant food from their own plot and what their domestic animals brought them. This approach was not stipulated by any superstition or law. It was the result of great knowledge. There is more than one way to know, and there are different degrees of knowing. One can not only know, but also sense with one's self, one's flesh and soul, many phenomena, the purposes of the divine creations, and his system. Each Vedian knew in this way that what he used for food not only nourished the flesh, but also filled the soul with consciousness, and brought him personally information from all the universe's worlds. This is why the energy inside them, and the sharpness of mind, and the speed of thought in those people exceeded that of modern people many times over. The animal world and the plants living in the human family's dimension reacted to man as to a god. The animals, herbs, and trees all thirsted for a kind glance or a good-natured touch from man. This power of sensory energy did not allow weeds to grow in the garden or orchard. Many people today also know that a domestic flower can suddenly wither if it is not to the liking of someone in the family. On the other hand, it can flourish if it feels love and communication. This is why Vedian people never touched their garden with a hoe. There is an expression today, evil eye, or put the evil eye on. It comes from those times. Those people were able to create a great deal with the energy of their senses. Imagine a person walking across the ground of his plot. Everything around tries to catch his good glance. Here he looked at a weed. Why are you here? The man thought. The weeds soon would wither from sorrow. On the contrary, if someone smiled at a cherry tree, that would make its sap run through its veins with doubled energy. If a person had to go on a long journey, he did not encumber himself with something to eat. He could find plenty of food for himself on his way. When he stopped in at a settlement and gazed upon its beautiful homesteads, he could ask for something to eat or drink. It was considered an honor to offer a traveler beverages, fruits, and delicious roots.
Title: Life Without Robbery or Theft.
Among the people of the Vedian civilization, throughout the millennia of its existence, there was not a single robbery, theft, or simple fistfight. Insulting words were even absent from their lexicon. At the same time, there were no laws punishing such actions. Laws can never ward off evil deeds, but the Veds' knowledge and culture did not allow for conflicts between people. Judge for yourself, Vladimir. After all, each family living on its own homestead knew that if any unpleasantness arose with anyone, even an outsider, on the homestead itself or nearby, even at the edge of the settlement, the entire dimension would suffer. The universal energy of aggression would affect what grew and everything that lived in it. The balance of energies would change. The energy of aggression can grow, reflect back on adults and children, and strike posterity with illness. On the contrary, if a passing traveler left a joyous feeling, the dimension would radiate even more beauty. In addition, the person who came to the settlement would be physically incapable of eating a fruit he had picked or picked up in a garden that belonged to someone else. The Vedian people had a high sensitivity. Their organism could immediately sense a significant difference when it tasted of fruit picked without leaf and a fruit offered by a kind hand. It is today, in modern stores, the food often does not have the smell and taste of the primordial product. It is soulless and indifferent to man. It is no one's and is given to no one. It is venal. If modern man could try and compare the food there was in the Vedian period, he would not be able to eat modern products. A stranger could not even contemplate taking something that was someone else's without asking. Any object, even a stone, contains information, and only the family living on the homestead knew what kind. Each homestead of the Vedian civilization was an impregnable fortress against anything malicious. At the same time, it was a maternal womb for the family living on it. No one built high fortress walls. The homestead territory was marked off by a living green fence. Both this fence and everything growing behind it safeguarded the family against all phenomena negative to the human flesh and soul. I have already told you about how relatives buried the bodies of the deceased, only in their own gardens for the homestead's woods. Those people knew that the human soul is eternal, but even material bodies cannot vanish without a trace. Each object, even an outwardly soulless one, bears quite a lot of universal information. Nothing disappears into nothingness in divine nature. It merely changes its state and flesh. The bodies of the deceased were not covered with stone slabs, and even the place of their burial was not marked in any way. The dimension created by their hand and heart served as a great monument to them. While changing their state, the now soulless bodies nurtured trees, grasses and flowers. The children born walked among them. Oh, how everything around loved the children. The spirit of their ancestors hovered above the dimension, loving and safeguarding the children. Children treated the dimension of their homestead with love. Their thought did not create the illusion of life's finiteness. The Ved's life is infinite. The soul soared through all the universal dimensions and, after visiting various planes of being, was reincarnated in human guise. Waking up, a child would smile once again in the garden in his homeland. The entire dimension would respond to him with a smile. The sunbeam, the breeze rustling the leaves, the flower, and the distant star would excel ecstatically. We are united, embodied by you, child of divine being. Today, the requests of elderly people living in foreign lands are considered inexplicable. When I die, bury me in my homeland. Intuitively, these people sense that only their homeland is capable of returning them to the earth in a heavenly garden. A foreign land rejects their souls. People strive to bury their bodies in their homeland. For millennia, their souls have asked for this. But how can one call a cemetery one's homeland, no matter what country it is in? Cemeteries arose quite recently for the purpose of tormenting human souls with hell, demeaning them, enslaving them, and forcing them to worship. Cemeteries they're like vacant lots where people dump their unwanted junk. The souls of the dead suffer above the cemetery. The living fear cemeteries. Imagine a homestead of those times. The bodies of many generations are buried there. Each living blade of grass tries to caress and be useful for man's flesh. For anyone who comes with aggression, each blade of grass and each fruit in the garden suddenly becomes poisonous. This is why it never even occurred to anyone to take anything without leave. A homestead could not be seized by force. It could not be bought for any money. Who is going to encroach upon something that is capable of destroying the encroachers? Each was trying himself to create his own beautiful oasis. The planet grew prettier with each passing year. When man passed his gaze over the modern city from high above today, what does he see? Piles of artificial stones cover the earth. Buildings rise up and out. The stone landscape covers greater and greater expanses, now here, now there. It contains no clean water, and the air is polluted. How many happy families live amid those stone hulks? Comparing modern families with a family of the Vedian culture, then not a single one. Human families are not living amid the stone artificial hulks, they are sleeping. And their hypnotic sleep, one single living cell nonetheless, roams through the body like seed. It falls still, then races, touching thousands and thousands of others. The living cell keeps trying to awaken the sleeping ones, and it is called the waking dream. It will awaken them. Then human families will begin creating beautiful oases on earth. As before, so it shall be again. If one were to look at the earth from high above, one's gaze would be enchanted by many vibrant scenes. Each beautiful scene would mean that in this place the hand of an awakened Ved had touched the earth. Once again, a happy family of people would live in their homeland, people who knew God and the meaning and purpose of life. The Veds knew why there were stars in the sky. Among them were many great poets and artists. No hostility existed between settlements. There was no reason for theft or plunder. Bureaucracies were unknown structures. Ved Russian culture flourished where the modern countries of Europe, India, Egypt and China are today, and there were no boundaries between the different territories. There were no rulers great or small. The sequence of great holidays was the natural government. People of the Vedian period possessed knowledge of the world order in immeasurably more detail than modern man does. Their internal energy allowed them to speed up the growth of some plants and slow down others. Domestic animals strove to carry out man's commands not in order to get food, of which there was an abundance. Rather, they wanted to be rewarded by man's beneficial energy. Even now, man's praise is pleasant to everyone, to man, to animal, and to plant. Previously, however, people's energy was immeasurably greater, and everything strove toward it as if toward the sun.
End of chapter. Join us for the next segment of the family book, Book 6 of the Ringing Cedar series, Imagery, the Test.